Mercedes are headed into the Melbourne GP with lots of questions unanswered, and it seems like nothing will change on this front after the third race on the grid, considering the fact that they've postponed their upgrades for the W15. Quite obviously, the team is still not understanding what is essentially wrong with the car, but with this in mind, is the team facing even bigger problems for the 2024 season? And how will that translate to the relationship between Hamilton and the Silver Arrows in their last season together? Mercedes have entered the season with their worst start ever since 2012, and that did not come without particular consequences for the Silver Arrows, who are now more careful when it comes to bringing upgrades to the car just for the sake of it. The Silver Arrows have decided to delay the planned upgrades for Melbourne, and it's quite depressing when you think about it, because the team is effectively admitting that they have no idea what is going on with their car. Yes, it's a brand new design and philosophy, and it takes a bit of time to be understood. However, one very persistent problem has continued to flaw the performance of the car, and that's the different behavior of the car during the same race weekend. When talking about this matter, Mercedes trackside engineer Andrew Shovlin went on to say, "It's a few things that plague our car. One of them was that the balance wasn't great. So in those very fast corners, the walls aren't particularly far away. So the corners where the driver wants a lot of confidence are definitely an issue. And quite often, we were snapping to oversteer if they really leant on the tyres. The bouncing is another issue, and you can easily imagine how unsettling that is for the drivers. Now, that was a factor in qualifying and the race, and in qualifying, we were also suffering a bit with the bouncing." Well, apart from this, Mercedes has a huge issue dealing with the downforce of the car, or more precisely, the lack of it. Obviously, adding a bigger rear wing to add more downforce was one of the solutions, but Wolff said that the car is naturally lacking on that front compared to their rivals, who have all made huge steps in the past couple of months, which makes the high-speed corners one of the main areas in which they need to stick their noses in and fix as soon as possible. When talking about this issue, Wolff went on to say, "I think there is a bigger factor, lacking high speed than just a rear wing. We're missing downforce beyond the steps that you will have a bigger rear wing. We tried it on with Lewis. They have something that we don't understand because we're quick everywhere else pretty much. We know that when we have a smaller rear wing, we're compensating what we're losing through the corners, but it's just the high speed variant where we're losing all the lap time." Now, it's also quite depressing that Mercedes will enter the Melbourne GP with yet another data collecting mindset, meaning that they'll be focusing vastly on trying to learn as much as they can about the car and then implement that information back to the factories and build a better optimized version of the car. The only issue here is that the team cannot really synchronize the information that's coming towards their end from the simulator and one from the track, explaining that while they do have all of the information available, there is this feeling that the team is taking a step back with the development of the car and there's nothing they're doing in order to improve in this frontier. Apart from this, the stability of the car didn't seem to have improved a lot, which naturally goes along with the fact that the drivers do not feel safe to send it into the high-speed corners, due to them experiencing oversteer while doing so. In this regard, Wolff went on to explain, "We've got a quick car, but it's on a knife's edge. The drivers are trying to squeeze out the lap consistently. George was on his way to a strong lap and could have been fighting for spots on the second row. Unfortunately, he lost the rear of the car. Lewis, meanwhile, never had the feedback from the car he wanted, and that meant he couldn't go faster." What this effectively does is raise the question of whether or not Mercedes are on top of things when it comes to building cars. Not that they do not have an idea of how to properly do that, but understanding the 2022 technical regulations seems like too big of a challenge for Mercedes to get on top of. Even with brand new aerodynamic surfaces, as well as mechanical changes that were supposed to synergize with the new concept, the W15 still suffers from some of the same issues that its predecessors had, and that in itself is quite low rated for a team like Mercedes. According to the race engineer Gary Anderson, Mercedes is not only not understanding the concept of their car, but Hamilton is still trying setups on his car and is praying that he'll find half a second of performance out of nowhere, which was exactly what he was doing back in 2022. paradoxically enough, it seems like Russell had a better start to the campaign, and if we are to judge from proximate history, it does seem like the younger Brit is better at driving the worst versions of Mercedes cars, whereas Hamilton needs the car to be sharper and closer to its rivals in order to extract its maximum potential. Now, a strong positive point for Mercedes headed into Melbourne is the straight line speed, which will be highly important at the second section that has 2 long straights apart from the start-finish line that provide overtaking opportunities for the cars. Nonetheless, the nature of the corners is not really suiting the W15, such as turn 6 and the fast-paced turn 9 and 10, which, if we're to judge from Jeddah, will cost Mercedes a couple of tenths just in these 3 turns themselves. Now, according to Chauvelin, the car is paying the price for the compensation the team is doing in order to do better in the corners, which is yet again another massive issue that they need to be fixing in the foreseeable future. As the engineer said, "We were actually one of the fastest car, if not the fastest car in a straight line, so we were quite a lot a light wing level. And what we could do is slow ourselves down in sectors 2 and 3 to try and recover a bit of that time in sector 1. But ideally, we like to keep that and work out a way to try and improve sector 1 by means other than just putting a load more downforce on the car and then paying the price for it on the straight." Now, why would Mercedes want to delay the upgrades when the car is obviously not doing well? And judging by the similarities that Jeddah and Melbourne have when it comes to the high-speed corners, the team is effectively entering the weekend by already raising their white flags. While this is not good for the short-term performance of Mercedes, it does go on to show one very important thing. They're trying to understand as much as they can in order to improve the car's performance in the middle of the season, around Imola, where the majority of their rivals will bring upgrades to their cars. There is a genuine threat that Mercedes can be kicked out of the top 3 teams, considering the fact that both Ferrari and McLaren have a very good foundation to implement the schedule upgrades further down the calendar. And even more importantly, Aston Martin is making strong statements about catching up with Red Bull in the middle of the season thanks to their own upgrades as well. All of this could see Mercedes fall down to the midfield, and if they do indeed accomplish this negative scenario, which isn't that far-fetched considering Lewis Hamilton is driving without any will or motivation after he was ignored for 2 years, and for the first time when the team heard and implemented his feedback on the car, it's still bad, then we're going to see a lot of broken bonds in the Mercedes team. Be that as it may, this is just another motivation for the Silver Arrows to turn things around, because the last thing they would want is to continue down this road, which would prove to be quite the unattractive market for the other drivers if they see that the team is making 0 progress and is actually regressing in the current era. Even though not many are hoping that any other team can challenge Red Bull for the championship, at least there is this hope that we can see closer racing once the upgrades start to come. And with their latest move, Mercedes have proven that they want to take things slow and make sure to not head in a direction that they will regret further down the road. With all this in mind, what do you think that Mercedes will access in Melbourne? And more importantly, do you think that they can indeed turn things around like Wolff promised to? Let us know in the comments down below.